Masks of Hollowell. The scream isn't his, it's Joey's, high-pitched, raw, and it cuts across the hallway just as the second bang hits the door. Louder this time, closer. The plywood frame shudders. Someone shrieks again, maybe Jan upstairs, maybe not. And then another voice, low and gritted, bellows through the letterbox. "Inside! We saw you run!" Tom doesn't move, his knees locked beside the coat stand, hand still in his pocket, fingers curled tight around the strap of the mask. He's been holding it since the first crash, since Vinny yelled something and Quinn pulled him back from the stairs. Now the front door judders again, 3, 4 thuds in quick succession, and somewhere behind him, glass shatters. "Shit! Kitchen window!" Vinny's voice, sharp, ragged. "They're coming in!" Tom still doesn't move. The air smells like damp leaves and smoke and something sour underneath. Sweat, maybe, or piss. His tongue tastes of metal and his breath sticks in his throat like it's caught on bone. He can hear the others scattering, voices overlapping, feet pounding up the stairs. Nick's voice is missing. Then comes the scream again, closer this time. 6 hours earlier, the only thing pounding was bass through the floorboards and the occasional overexcited fist on the bathroom door. Tom stood in the hallway of Hollowell House, one hand resting inside his coat pocket, thumb grazing the coarse elastic of the old plastic mask. The music pulsed through the walls, some remix of an 80s track, all synth and distorted vocals. And the house already stank of beer and melting chocolate, and that faint, woody tang of bonfire smoke from the back garden. Fake cobwebs sagged in the corners, heavy with condensation, and someone had drawn crude ghosts in the steamed-up kitchen window. "All right, mate." Vinny clapped him on the back, nearly spilling his drink over Tom's shoulder. "You look like someone pissed in your punch." Tom smiled thinly. "Just pacing myself." "Christ, it's Halloween, not Lent." Vinny slurped his drink and leaned against the banister, his plastic vampire fangs catching the light. "You see Nick set up in the lounge yet?" Tom shook his head. "Mate," Vinny said, grinning. "He's gone full theater this year, like budget West End. There's dry ice, a voiceover. He even roped in Jan to do some half-arsed seance thing." Tom followed him into the lounge, where the lights had been dimmed to a flickering orange and fake ravens hung from fishing wire above the fireplace. A cardboard maze of black-painted fridge boxes snaked through the room, its walls covered in chalk-scrawled sigils and glow-in-the-dark tape. A smoke machine hissed from behind the sofa, filling the room with a low fog that caught the light like stage mist. Nick stood at the far end of the room, arms flung wide, wearing a long, tattered coat and a papier-mâché mask shaped like a skull with a cracked jaw. His voice boomed out through a portable speaker hidden beneath the mantelpiece, reading some half-plagiarized Latin invocation in a growl that wouldn't have sounded out of place in a student production of Macbeth. Tom felt the corners of his mouth twitch. Nick caught his eye and dipped into an exaggerated bow, sweeping his coat like a cape. "Welcome, honored guests, to the last rites of Hollowell House." Joey, already half drunk, whooped from a beanbag near the fireplace. 10 out of 10 for effort, mate." "Thanks for noticing," Nick said, tugging off the mask. His face was flushed, slick with sweat. He smiled, but the corners of his eyes didn't crinkle. "Took me 2 days to rig that bloody fog machine. Jan nearly tripped on the wires twice." "Worth it," Vinny said. "It's like a goth IKEA in here." "High praise," Nick muttered, pulling a tissue from his pocket and wiping his forehead. Tom watched him for a moment, watched the way Nick's hands trembled slightly, the way his smile faded too fast. There were smudges beneath his eyes that hadn't been there last year. The charisma was still there, undeniable, but it flickered, like a bulb starting to go. "You all right?" Tom asked quietly. Nick blinked. "What?" Tom shrugged. "Just, You look tired." Nick laughed, too loud. "I'm always tired. It's part of the aesthetic." Vinny threw himself onto the sofa, legs sprawled. "He's been running around all day like a lunatic. Probably burned more calories than I've eaten this month." "Someone had to make it fun," Nick said. He glanced around the room. "Did you see the scarecrow outside?" "You mean the effigy?" Joey grinned. "Mate, it's got your old school uniform on." "Symbolic," Nick said. "Guy Fawkes meets GCSE regret." "Bit early for bonfire night," Quinn said from the doorway. He was holding a cup of something that steamed faintly, his face half-shadowed by the hallway light behind him. Nick raised his eyebrows. "Art doesn't follow the calendar cue." Quinn didn't reply. He looked at the scarecrow through the open window, his gaze lingering. "Someone's moved it." "What?" Nick turned. "It was facing the garden earlier," Quinn said. "Now it's turned toward the house." "Wind, probably," Tom offered. Though something about the angle did look deliberate. The head, an old pumpkin with a melted candle inside, seemed to stare directly at them. Nick waved a hand. "Adds to the drama. Let it watch." They drifted through the evening like that. Music swelling, laughter thick in the air, the kind of night that felt like it couldn't end. At some point, Robbie turned up with Jan, both dressed as plague doctors, and someone lit sparklers in the back garden. The scent of smoke grew heavier, clinging to their clothes and hair. Fireworks cracked in the distance, little bursts of color behind the rooftops. Tom stayed mostly quiet, nursing the same bottle of beer for over an hour. He kept his coat on. His fingers kept drifting to the mask in his pocket, a flimsy plastic thing, white with exaggerated lips and hollow black eyes. A Guy Fawkes knockoff from years ago, warped slightly with age. He didn't wear it anymore, just kept it close, a habit, a compulsion. He wasn't sure which. At 11, the power cut out. There was a collective groan from the kitchen, followed by Vinny shouting, "Nick, what have you done now?" "I didn't touch anything," Nick yelled back. Probably tripped the fuse." Joey lit a tea light, holding it aloft like a torch. "Bet it's the fog machine. Knew that thing'd be the death of us." "Fuse box is in the basement," Nick said. "Come on, Tom, help me find a torch." Tom followed him into the hallway. The house felt different with the lights out, smaller somehow, the shadows thicker. The music had stopped, and in the absence of noise, he could hear the creak of the floorboards upstairs, the low murmur of voices. Nick rummaged in a drawer by the stairs, muttering. Bloody things, always sticking. Tom glanced toward the front door. There was a movement outside. He froze. A figure stood at the end of the driveway. Tall, still, wearing something white. Maybe a mask, maybe not. The porch light was out, but the silhouette was unmistakable. "Nick," he said quietly. Nick looked up. The figure stepped forward, then another appeared behind it, then a third. All silent, all still. Then came the first bang. It wasn't a knock. It was a blow, deliberate, brutal. The door shuddered in its frame. Nick dropped the torch. "What the hell, Another bang, this time louder, closer. Voices rose from the living room. "What's going on?" Tom backed away from the door, heart hammering. Then a voice rang out from the other side of the door, muffled but clear. "Inside. We saw you run." Nick stared at the door, his mouth slightly open. Then the glass in the kitchen exploded. Screams, footsteps, chaos. "Upstairs!" Vinny shouted. "Everyone upstairs!" Tom didn't move. He couldn't. His hand was already in his pocket, fingers curled tight around the old mask. Not again, he thought. Please, not again. Under the bed, Tom's legs finally moved. Barely. He turned and bolted after the others, the echo of shattering glass still ringing in his ears. His trainers slipped on the hardwood as he rounded the corner into the stairwell, shoulders slamming into the banister. Nick was ahead of him, already taking the stairs two at a time. Someone screamed again downstairs, high, raw, animal. Jan, maybe. Or Robbie. The hallway upstairs was narrow, the old house groaning under the sudden weight of panicked footsteps. Vinny's voice barked from one of the rooms. "In here! Come on!" Tom shoved past Joey, nearly tripping over Quinn, who was already scrambling through the doorway into Nick's bedroom. The door slammed behind them just as a heavy footfall landed on the stairs below. Nick locked the door. "Help me," he snapped, dragging his desk across the floor. The wooden legs shrieked against the boards as Tom and Vinny helped him wedge it in front of the door. The weight was laughable. It might delay, not stop. There was a crash from downstairs, a door flung open, something heavy knocked over, then a voice, guttural and sharp. "Split up! Find them!" Tom's chest heaved. The voice was wrong, too casual. Like someone pretending to be angry. Theater, he thought. But there was no audience. "Under the bed," Nick said. "Closet 2. Hide. Do not make a sound." They scattered. Joey dove for the closet, tugging Quinn with him. Jan was gone. Tom didn't know where. Robbie hesitated in the middle of the room, then dropped to the floor and crawled under the bed. Vinny followed a second later, muttering, fucking hell," like a prayer. Tom didn't move. Nick grabbed his shoulder. "Go," he hissed. "Please." Tom nodded and dropped to the floor, sliding in beside Robbie. The underside of the bed smelled of dust and old sweat. The carpet scratched at his cheek. He couldn't see much, just the slats, Robbie's trainers, and the darkness between them. The room fell silent. Only their breathing remained, shallow, frantic, barely contained. Footsteps upstairs. Then the unmistakable sound of something dragged along the wall, metal on plaster. A bat, a crowbar. The first hit against the bedroom door made the whole bed jump. Tom flinched. Robbie didn't even move. A second hit. The desk scraped an inch across the floor. Then a third, and the lock gave way with a crack like a snapped bone. Boots stomped in, heavy, confident. Tom pressed his forehead to the floorboards. His fingers curled into fists beneath him. He could hear someone moving. No rush, just deliberate pacing. The floor creaked with each step. There was breathing, too, low and wet, like someone snorting through phlegm, then silence, then two under the bed. Tom's stomach dropped. He didn't know if the voice was real or imagined. He didn't dare look, didn't even blink. 2 in the closet. The voice was closer now, right above them. It wasn't angry or loud, it was almost amused. "Where's the rest?" A moment passed. A boot scuffed the floor, then, "Come out." No one moved. A sigh. Then a bang, something heavy slammed into the closet door. Quinn yelped. "No, fine." The closet door was torn open. Joey shouted. Quinn screamed, raw and short, like it had been cut off. Tom bit down on his fist. There was a scuffle, thudding, then a dragging sound, as if someone was being pulled across the floor. "Don't," Joey's voice pleaded. "Please, don't." Something hit the wall, then stillness. Tom couldn't breathe. The bed above them shifted, someone stepping on it. Then a crouch. A hand dropped down, fingers curling around the edge of the mattress. Then Nick's voice, calm, shaking. "They're not here." Silence. "I'm the one you want," he said. "I opened the house. It was my idea." Another pause. "You get me and you leave the rest. Please." Tom felt something pass overhead. A shadow, maybe, a presence. Then the voice again. "You coming then?" Nick didn't answer. A beat, then, "Yeah." Footsteps moved away from the bed. 1 set, then 2. Then the door creaked open again, and they were gone. Tom didn't move for a long time. Neither did Robbie. Eventually, Vinny whispered, "Tom?" Tom couldn't answer. His tongue was dry, his jaw ached from clenching. "Tom," Vinny said again, louder. We've got to check. A gunshot cut through the house. Then another. Muffled, distant. Then nothing. Tom rolled out from under the bed. His legs were numb, his shoulders scraped from the floor. Robbie crawled out beside him, pale and shaking. Quinn was sitting in the corner, his knees tucked to his chest. Joey was beside him, holding his arm, blood soaked through his sleeve. "We need to go," Quinn said. His voice was flat. "Jan," Robbie said suddenly. "Where's Jan?" No one answered. They crept down the stairs together, one at a time. Each creak felt like a scream. The house was quiet now, eerily so. The front door hung open, the glass shattered across the floor. The cold wind blew in, carrying the smell of smoke and something else, coppery, thick, clinging. They found her in the hallway. Jan, she was face down, half in the kitchen. Her back was soaked through with blood, her arms twisted beneath her. Robbie dropped to his knees. Jan. Vinny pulled him back. "Don't." Robbie fought him. She might. "She's gone," Quinn said. His voice didn't waver. Tom turned away. His stomach lurched. He caught himself on the wall, breathing hard. Joey limped toward the living room. "Where's Nick? Where's—" He stopped. Robbie followed, then froze. In the living room, beside the toppled sofa, was another body, slumped, face turned away. Robbie stepped forward. "No." It was Robbie's voice this time that cracked. No. It was Robbie. Tom stared. Couldn't understand, then he saw it. The jacket, the trainers, the small silver keyring in the boy's hand, Robbie's. But Robbie was standing here. He blinked. "Mate," Vinny said quietly, "you're in shock. That's not—" But it was. The realization hit them all at once. The boy on the floor wasn't Robbie. It was someone wearing his clothes, someone roughly his size, his build, face missing. Quinn stepped forward. "It's not him," he said. "It's not." But Tom's hands were shaking. He turned to Robbie. "Where's your keyring?" Robbie reached into his pocket. Nothing. He checked the other. Nothing. I had it," he said. "I swear." Quinn knelt by the body. He didn't touch it, just looked. Then he stood. "We need to go." They left through the back, stepping over the shattered remains of the kitchen window. The garden was still, the fog low and clinging. There were no lights in the neighboring houses. No one had come to check the noise. No one had called the police. Tom kept looking back, expecting Nick to appear in the doorway, expecting Jan to laugh and call them idiots, expecting someone to say it had all been a joke. But no one came. They reached the street. Tom's hand went to his pocket out of habit. The mask was gone. He didn't remember dropping it. Beside him, Vinny was shaking. I told him not to push it. Told him the town was weird about that night. Told him the masks were a shit idea. Tom didn't answer. He kept walking. Quinn stopped at the corner. "We should call it in." "From where?" Joey asked. "My phone's still in there." "Someone's house," Quinn said, "but someone's awake." Tom looked at him. Quinn's eyes were wide but steady. Too steady. "What did you see, Tom?" Quinn looked away. "Q, what did you see?" "I don't know," he said, "and it was dark." "That's not—" I said, "I don't know." They fell silent. A porch light flicked on down the street. Joey limped toward it, his good arm raised. "Help! Please, call someone." An older man opened the door, dressing gown pulled tight, phone already in hand. "Jesus," he muttered, looking them over. "What happened?" Tom didn't answer. He was staring at the hedge across the road. A shape stood behind it, tall, still, wearing something white. Then it was gone. He blinked. Gone. Vinny was talking now, to the man, to the phone, to the others. But Tom couldn't move. His hand went to his pocket again, empty. He felt cold. Not the wind. Something else. Later, he wouldn't remember walking to the police car. Wouldn't remember the first questions, the blankets, the lights. He'd remember the warmth of the mask in his pocket that wasn't there anymore. He'd remember Nick's voice saying, "Please," as he stepped into the dark. And he'd remember staying under the bed, doing nothing, saying nothing, and surviving. Masks of Hollowell, the funerals came quickly, as if the town wanted the dead buried before the story settled into anyone's bones. Jan's service was first. St. Cuthbert's packed with faces Tom hadn't seen since school, all scrubbed clean and too quiet. Her mother wore a veil that clung to her mouth when she spoke, and her father kept shaking hands with people, like it might stop them from saying anything real. A picture of Jan in her sixth form leaver's hoodie stood beside the coffin, the frame crooked. Someone had left a plastic spider on it. No one claimed it. Tom stood at the back, between Vinny and Quinn. Joey hadn't come. His ankles still in a cast, his face still bruised. Vinny kept fiddling with the order of service, folding the corner, then unfolding it. Quinn didn't move at all. When the vicar spoke Jan's name, Tom saw Quinn's jaw twitch once, then still. Afterwards, in the cold hush outside, Vinny lit a cigarette and didn't say anything. Quinn stared at the gravel. Tom watched Jan's parents get into a car with tinted windows, her mother leaning into her father's side like a collapsed tent. "Robbie's is next week," Tom said, mostly to fill the air. Vinny nodded. "You going?" Tom didn't answer. He was. But he didn't want to say it aloud, like saying yes made it a second funeral, a second body, a second time he'd pretend they hadn't all been there, hadn't all watched the door open and done nothing when Nick stepped forward. Robbie's funeral was smaller. His sister spoke. She wore a scarf with tiny pumpkins on it and cried through most of her speech. Tom remembered her from school, 3 years below them, always in the library. She looked older now, brittle. Nick didn't come to either service. But a letter arrived for Jan's parents. Then another for Robbie's, typed. No return address, signed, Nicholas Hollowell. Tom never read them, but he heard things. That Nick had said sorry, that he'd said he hadn't known, that he'd been trying to help, that he'd tried to stop them, that he'd left it too late. There were rumors he'd turned himself in, that he'd been arrested, that he was in rehab, that he was in Spain, that he was dead. None of them were true. The truth was quieter. He was still in town that winter, spotted once outside the pharmacy with a hood pulled low. Another time in the co-op, buying 2 bottles of vodka and crisps. Someone said they saw him crying on the bench by the war memorial. Someone else said he laughed. Vinny saw him once in the alley behind the pub. Said he looked like he hadn't slept in weeks. Said he tried to talk to him, but Nick just walked past. "I think he was on something," Vinny told Tom. "Or off something, I don't know." They were sitting in Tom's kitchen. The windows steamed. November rain tapped lightly against the glass. Tom had a match in his hand. It was the 5th of November. "You think he's lying?" Tom asked. Vinny shrugged. "I think he's always been a bit of a liar, yeah." Tom struck the match. The flame wobbled, then steadied. Vinny watched it. "You always do that?" Tom nodded. "Every year." "Why?" Tom didn't answer. The match burned low. He dropped it into the sink. "Quinn's not talking to me," Vinny said after a moment. "He's not talking to anyone. He knows more than he said." "Yeah." They sat in silence for a while. In December, the Hollowell house was boarded up. No one said why. The police tape was long gone, but the windows were shuttered and the front gate chained. Kids still dared each other to throw stones at it. One night someone set off fireworks in the garden. The next morning, Tom walked past and saw the black scorch marks on the grass, the spent rockets like bones. By spring, Nick was gone. No goodbye, no note. Just vanished. Tom didn't ask questions. He moved out of his parents' place the next summer, took a rental 2 streets over from the library. Small, 2-bed with a narrow garden, and a patch of moss that never quite left the back wall. He got a job at the council office, pushing paper and answering emails. It was quiet. No one asked much of him. He kept the mask in a shoebox under his bed. He didn't tell anyone he'd found it again. Weeks after the party, folded into his coat pocket like it had never left. No stains, no smell, just there. He never wore it, but he kept it. Every 5th of November, he lit a match, just one, watched it burn. Quinn stopped replying to messages. Moved to London, someone said. Or maybe Manchester, no one was sure. He didn't come back for reunions, didn't like social media, didn't want to be found. Vinny stayed in town, worked at a garage, dated a girl from the next village over for a while, then didn't. He still drank too much, still made jokes that landed like bricks. Remember when Nick said he was going to be famous? He said once, outside the pub. Said he'd be on stage or telly or something, and said people would know his name. Tom didn't laugh. Vinny took a long drag from his cigarette. Well, people know it now. They didn't talk about Joey. He'd moved away too. Got a job in Bristol. Sent Tom a Christmas card once, with a picture of a dog in a Santa hat. No message, just his name scribbled at the bottom. Sometimes, Tom thought about calling him. But what would he say? I stayed under the bed. I heard Jan scream. I did nothing. He started walking at night. Quiet streets, the smell of garden fires and damp leaves. Sometimes he passed the Hollowell house, still empty, still boarded. The chain rusted now, weeds thick around the steps. Once he saw someone in the upstairs window, just a shape, still. He didn't go back for a while after that. But the dreams kept coming, not bloody, not loud, just quiet ones. The kind where someone's calling your name and you can't turn around, where the mask is hanging on the banister, where Nick is standing in the corner saying, please, over and over. The kind where he wakes up with his hand in his pocket, searching for something that isn't there. Years passed like that. The town moved on. The papers stopped writing about it. The police closed the file. No suspects, no arrests, theories, yes, whispers, but nothing stuck. Tom kept living. He grew a beard, took up baking, got a cat, learned to sleep with the light on. He didn't go out on Halloween, not once. He kept the shoebox taped shut. Until the knock. It came on a Thursday. Tom had just made tea. The cat was asleep on the windowsill. Rain ticked against the glass. The telly murmured in the background, some documentary about shipwrecks. He wasn't really watching. It was 10:58 p.m. The knock came 2 minutes later. 3 knocks. Heavy, slow. He froze. Not the post. Not a neighbor. No one knocked like that. He stood, heart thudding. The cat's ears twitched. Another knock. He stepped into the hallway, looked through the peephole. No one. He waited. Then slowly opened the door. The porch was empty, but the air smelled wrong, like ash. He looked down. On the doormat was a single match, unused. Bone dry despite the rain. He picked it up. It was warm. He looked out into the street. No one. No footsteps. No car. Just the deck and the wet gleam of the pavement. And the slow realization that he wasn't alone. He shut the door. Locked it. The cat was staring at the hallway. Tom turned off the lights. Stood still. Listened. Nothing. But the match was still in his hand. He didn't light it. Not yet. Not this time. Instead, he went to the bedroom, pulled the shoebox from under the bed, opened it. The mask was gone. In its place, a folded piece of paper, typed. No return address, just one line. "Do you remember what you said under the bed?" Tom sat down. The cat jumped off the windowsill. Outside, the rain stopped. The street went quiet. Too quiet. And somewhere, close but not close enough to prove, he thought he heard someone laugh. Not loud, just once. Then gone. Masks of Hollowell, he didn't sleep. The cat curled on the edge of the bed like nothing had changed. But Tom lay stiff, eyes fixed on the ceiling, listening for the creak of floorboards that never came. Every now and then, the fridge hummed or the central heating clicked, and he'd startle like a soldier in a trench, heart hammering. He got up just before dawn, made tea he didn't drink, sat in the kitchen with the lights off, watching the garden blur behind the condensation on the back door's window. The match still sat on the table, its head pale and untouched. At 7:30, he phoned in sick. His voice cracked halfway through the call. By 10, he'd convinced himself it was a prank. A horrible, calculated prank, but a prank nonetheless. Kids, maybe, or someone from town who remembered too much and wanted to remind him. It wasn't hard. The house was small, and his name wasn't common. The past wasn't buried, not really. Still, he checked every lock, twice. Left the telly on, didn't open the curtains. Every sound outside made him flinch. It rained again in the afternoon, thin, steady drizzle that turned the street into a blur of gray and glistening black. He watched it from the lounge, mug in hand, cat in his lap. He told himself not to look at the shoebox again. At some point, he must have dozed off. When he woke, the mug was cold in his hand and the room was dark. The clock said 9:04 p.m. The cat was gone. The kitchen light was on. He didn't remember leaving it that way. "Whiskers," he called, voice low. No response. He stood, joints stiff. Every step toward the kitchen felt like walking into a memory he didn't want to remember. The back door sat half in shadow, its pane of glass streaked with rain. The cat wasn't there. The light above the sink buzzed faintly. Then he saw the footprints, muddy, bare, leading from the door across the linoleum toward the table. He stared, throat tightening. There were 6, 3 in, 3 out. The door was shut. He reached for the handle. Locked. He unlocked it, opened it slowly. The night greeted him with a wall of damp air and the faint smell of something acrid. Burnt wood, maybe, or the sour tang of fireworks gone out too long ago. The garden was empty. The gate latched. No movement. He looked down. The outside step was smeared with mud. Just one footprint, bare, toes splayed. He closed the door, locked it, backed away. Something crunched underfoot. He looked down. Another match. This one wasn't whole, burnt halfway through. The blackened stem snapped under his heel. He dropped to his knees, heart in his throat. It was the same kind Jan used to carry, those little wax-tipped ones in a tin she never let anyone borrow. He remembered her laughing, saying they were her emergency light, a joke now so bitter it turned his stomach. He stood and turned. The kitchen table was no longer empty. Someone was underneath it. He saw the bare foot first, poking out, toes muddy, skin gray and slick. Then the hand, splayed, fingers trembling. The tablecloth shifted. Something moved beneath it, slow and uneven, like a puppet with tangled strings. He couldn't speak, couldn't move. Then the hand twitched. The figure crawled out. Not fast, not charging, just slow, deliberate, like pain made each inch a decision. It was a man, maybe, clothes soaked and torn, face hidden beneath a mask, a Guy Fawkes one, but scorched, the edges melted like it had been held to fire. One eye hole was warped. The other stared at him, the head tilted. Tom stumbled back, hit the counter. "Who are you?" he managed. The figure didn't answer. It collapsed to its knees, then to all fours. One hand reached out, pressed to the linoleum, then the voice, dry, cracked, like leaves crushed underfoot. "You left me." Tom shook his head. No, I didn't." "You said we'd stay," it rasped. The mask tilted again. "I said wait," Tom breathed. "I said..." "You ran." The word came like a cough. Tom backed into the hallway. The figure didn't follow, just crouched there. Breathing, if it was breathing, shallow and wrong, like air didn't belong in its lungs anymore. Tom grabbed the phone. His fingers shook so hard he hit 6 first. "Emergency, which service?" "Police, please." "Someone's broken in. He's still here. He's wearing a mask." "Are you in danger?" "I don't know. He's under my table. He's not right." "Name and address?" He gave it, voice cracking. "We're dispatching units now. Stay on the line." A soft thud. He turned. The kitchen was empty. The tablecloth moved in the draft. He stepped forward. No figure. No footprints beyond the ones already there. But the back door was open now, wide, rain blowing in sideways. He hadn't heard it open, he hadn't heard it close. He hadn't heard anything. He hung up. The operator was still talking, but he couldn't focus. He grabbed a torch from the hallway drawer and stepped onto the porch. The street was empty. The rain lighter now, misting more than falling. He scanned the garden. Nothing. Then movement. Across the road, under the street lamp, a shape. Limping, dragging one foot. The mask caught the light. Warped grin, burnt plastic. Tom froze. The figure stopped, turned, looked directly at him, then stepped back into shadow. Gone. Sirens in the distance. He didn't wait. He ran back inside, locked the door, shut every window. The cat reappeared 15 minutes later, dry and calm, as though nothing had happened. The police came 20 after that. 2 officers, one tall and young, the other squat and tired-looking. They took his statement while walking the perimeter, found the footprints, photographed the match, bagged it, radioed in. "No signs of forced entry," the younger one said, crouching by the back door. "You sure it was locked?" "I check it every night," Tom said. It was locked when I went to bed." "Right." The older officer joined him in the kitchen. "And you're certain you saw someone? Not just shadows or..." "He was here," Tom said. "He spoke to me. He said something only Nick would have known." That brought a pause. "Nick Hollowell?" the older one asked. Tom nodded. The officer exhaled slowly. "You know he was never found." "I know. You think someone's pretending to be him?" "I don't know what I think." They didn't press further, just made notes, took photos, promised to canvass the street in the morning, asked if he wanted to stay elsewhere. He said no. They didn't argue. After they left, he sat in the kitchen for a long time. The footprints were still visible in the mud, but the floor was clean. He hadn't wiped it. He hadn't touched anything. And yet, the prints stopped at the table. No drag marks, no exit trail, just a final, single print facing the door. As if whoever it was had stepped back into the dark and vanished. He checked the windows before bed. That's when he saw the smudge. On the inside of the lounge window, a handprint. Too small to be his, too wide to be the cat's. Fingers splayed, palms streaked with ash. Masks of Hollowell, The fluorescent lights in the station buzzed with a low nasal whine that never quite stopped. Tom sat alone in the interview room, elbows on the laminated table, hands clasped too tightly. The chair beneath him was bolted to the floor, as though they worried he might bolt with it. Across the table, nothing but a blank wall and a narrow strip of mirror. He knew what was behind it, or who. He stared into his reflection, the way his face looked under that lighting, washed out, eyes sunken, like he'd been ill for weeks. Something about it reminded him of the mask, not the one from the garden. The other one. The one he still kept in his bag, zipped into the lining, the old Halloween mask. He'd thought about bringing it in. A part of him still wanted to. Footsteps approached. The door opened with a metallic rattle, and in walked Detective Alan Mercer. Coat off, sleeves rolled, tie loosened. He looked like he'd slept in his shirt. Probably had. "Tom," he said, nodding. "Detective." Mercer sat opposite him, setting a steaming paper cup between them. "Tea. Not much of a peace offering, but it's warm." Tom didn't reach for it. Mercer leaned back slightly, not relaxed, just giving space. "Let's go through it again, from last night." Tom nodded, voice low. "I woke up just after 3. I'd heard something earlier, but I thought it was the cat. Then I saw him in the garden, dragging one foot. The mask was melted, burnt, like plastic over a candle. He turned, looked right at me, then he was gone. Gone how? Just stepped back into the dark." "You're sure it wasn't someone messing about? A prank?" No one knew what he said. The line. It was from the party. He whispered it through the glass. "You should have picked someone else." That's what Nick said. That night. When Tom stopped, swallowed. Mercer's expression didn't change, but he made a note. "You're certain that's the phrase?" Tom nodded. Mercer tapped the pen against his pad once, then stopped. "We've gone back through the biz. The original attackers. 3 were convicted. 1 we never identified. The 4th. The one Jan scratched. We had DNA, but no match in the system, and no body. That was the one the one he went with." Tom's voice was hoarse. "You think it's him now?" "I think someone wants you to think that." They sat in silence for a moment, the station's background hum filling the space. Somewhere down the corridor, a printer clattered to life. Mercer stood. "Come with me, I want you to see something." The corridor was narrow and smelled faintly of floor cleaner and old takeaway. Officers moved around them, heads down, phones pressed to ears. At the far end, a constable nodded and opened the evidence room. Inside, under harsh light and behind a glass panel, lay the match, half burnt, blackened at the tip, bagged and tagged. Next to it, a photo of the footprint. Muddy, deep, the edges irregular. Mercer gestured to the photo. "We sent this to forensics this morning. Soil analysis confirms it's from your garden. But here's the odd bit. The print's too deep for the weight of a single person. It's like more than one footstep layered, compressed, like someone stood there for a long time. Or someone heavier than they should have been." Tom blinked. "What does that mean?" Mercer didn't answer. Instead, he turned and led Tom into the observation corridor behind the interview rooms. On the other side of the two-way mirror, the room Tom had just been sitting in. "Watch," Mercer said. A technician in gloves entered the room, waved a UV light over the glass. A faint, oily smudge glowed where Tom had seen it earlier. A handprint. But even under UV, it looked wrong. The fingers were too long, the palm uneven, like the skin had torn before making contact. "We tested for blood, oils, any organic residue," Mercer said. "Initial analysis came back strange." "How?" "There's mold present. Traces of decay, not just dirt. something biological, but not consistent with a living person. Tom felt his stomach turn. Mercer looked at him. We're not saying it's supernatural, but someone's gone to a lot of trouble to make it seem that way. And whoever they are, they know things they shouldn't. Tom's voice was quiet. He knew the line, the one only Nick said. Mercer studied him for a long time. We can't ignore that, but we also can't afford to assume. Right now, we're treating this as a credible threat, which means temporary relocation, somewhere secure, until we know more. I'm not leaving Hollowell. You're not being given the option. They put him in a safe house near the station. Anonymous, 2-story, semi-detached, curtains drawn. A WPC brought him tea and a plate of toast he didn't touch. The windows were double locked. A car sat idling outside, just in case. That night, he didn't sleep, just stared out through the cracks in the blinds. There was no one in the garden, no mask, no drag marks. But around 2 in the morning, the television turned itself on, volume low, static. He unplugged it. At 4, the hallway light flickered. He lit a match and let it burn down to his fingers before dropping it into the sink. Next morning, Mercer returned. We've reviewed the CCTV from Hollowell House, from that night. Tom nodded, eyes raw from lack of sleep. There's a gap. 10 minutes, right before the others arrived. Someone disabled the cameras, not professionally, just unplugged them, but they knew which ones to target. So it was planned, Mercer nodded. And whoever's doing this now knows that house better than we do. Tom thought of the maze, the cardboard walls, the way Nick had moved through it like he owned it. There's something else, Mercer said. We dusted the inside of your lounge window, where you saw the smudge, the ash. And the chemical makeup doesn't match household soot. There's bone residue, calcined fragments, like from cremated remains. Tom's breath caught. That's not possible. I didn't think so either. That afternoon, he was back in the interview room, alone again. Mercer had stepped out to take a call. The mirror loomed. Tom leaned forward, staring into his own reflection. The overhead light flickered once, then again, buzzing, then silence, a hum, and then movement, a shadow. On the other side of the glass, not Mercer, not anyone he recognized. The figure leaned forward slowly until its face, or what passed for it, pressed against the pane. The mask was warped, half-melted, the eye holes hollowed and black, the mouth a fixed grin. The plastic bubbled like it had been pulled from a fire. Tom couldn't move. The figure raised one hand, pressed it flat to the glass, palm splayed, fingers too long, the same handprint, the same ash smear, and then softly, so softly, it barely carried through the wall. You picked the wrong one. The light snapped back. The figure was gone. The glass was clean. But when Mercer returned a moment later, Tom was still staring, still frozen. Mercer followed his gaze. What happened? Tom didn't speak. He just pointed. Mercer stepped forward. There, faint but visible in the right light, was a new smear. Another handprint, fresh, still damp. They called in forensics immediately, swabbed the surface, took samples, logged everything. The technician looked pale. There's something wrong with the residue, she said. It's human, but it's breaking down, like it's already decomposing. Mercer looked at Tom. We're moving you again, now. By that evening, they'd locked the evidence away. 2 separate lockers. Access logs updated. Prints cross-checked. The half-burnt match. The footprint photo. The handprint swab. All tagged. All sealed. Still, the night staff swore they heard something in the corridor. shuffling, like someone dragging one foot. When they checked the CCTV footage the next morning, 10 minutes were missing, again. Masks of Hollowell. The street outside the station was too quiet. Even with the sodium lamps buzzing overhead and the distant hum of traffic from the bypass, Tom felt like he'd stepped into something sealed off. The cold wasn't sharp, but damp, the kind that soaked into joints and settled there. His breath clouded faintly as he stepped onto the pavement, Mercer trailing behind him, glancing left and right like he didn't trust the stillness either. They'd moved him again, new flat, unlisted, different side of town. Mercer had insisted on walking him out the front himself, despite the late hour. Public enough to deter anything stupid, he'd said. Visible, controlled. But Tom could feel the lie in it. There was nothing controlled about what was happening now. Mercer paused at the curb, scanning the narrow run of shops opposite. The off-license was shuttered, the bakery dark. A single takeaway still glowed in blue neon, but no customers lingered. The wind shifted, bringing the faint smell of bin rot and wet leaves. "You all right?" Mercer asked. Tom nodded, though he wasn't. He felt like a wire stretched too tight, one pull from snapping. They crossed the street. Behind them, the police station loomed with its dated brickwork and high windows, the glass catching every flicker of passing light like watchful eyes. Tom didn't look back. He kept his gaze on the street ahead where the pavement dipped slightly and the streetlight above flickered. That was when he saw it. Not the movement itself, not at first, just the absence. A shape that didn't match the surroundings, a figure, still and upright, standing just beyond the pool of light beneath the flickering lamp. The face was in shadow, but the outline was wrong. Not bulky, not tall, just familiar. Tom stopped walking. Mercer took another step, then turned. "Tom?" But Tom didn't answer. He couldn't. His throat had closed. The figure didn't move. The wind stirred, and with it came a scent. Damp rot and something chemical like scorched plastic. Tom's stomach turned. The light above the figure buzzed twice, then steadied. Just for a moment. Long enough. The mask caught the light. It was the same one. Or made to be. Warped by heat, the left side melted inward like wax. The mouth twisted in a permanent sneer. The black eye holes stared out, empty. The gloved hand rose slowly. No weapon. Just a gesture. A salute. Tom's breath caught. The air tasted of ash. Then the figure spoke. Not loud. Barely audible above the hum of the street lamp. "Do you remember what we said in the maze?" Tom's legs nearly gave out. Because the phrase, those exact words, had only ever been said once, whispered, half laughing, in the cardboard corridors of the Hollowell house maze years ago. Nick had said it, to him, after they'd taken the wrong turn and crouched behind a stack of fake gravestones, hiding from someone they thought was a prankster. It had been a joke, a nervous one, shared in the dark. "Do you remember what we said in the maze?" Only two people had heard it, Tom and Quinn. The figure stepped forward. Tom stumbled back instinctively, bumping into Mercer. "Oi," Mercer said, steadying him. "What is it?" Tom pointed. The figure was gone. The streetlight above flickered again, then went out with a soft pop. Mercer's eyes narrowed. He stepped forward, scanning the pavement. "Where did they go?" "I don't know," Tom said. His voice sounded strange in his own ears, thin, hollow. Mercer moved ahead, torch already in hand, beam sweeping the alley to the left, the recessed doorway to the right. Nothing. Then he crouched. "Footprints," he said. Tom moved closer. In the beam of the torch, the prints were clear, muddy, deep, the treads uneven. But they ended abruptly. Just stopped, mid-step, on the dry concrete. No continuation, Mercer muttered. No turnoff, no retreat, nothing. He stood slowly, frowning. Then his nose wrinkled. Smell that? Tom nodded. It was stronger now, rot. Like wet soil and something gone bad. Mercer swore under his breath and keyed his radio. Control, it's D.I. Mercer. I need a unit to my location, station front. Bring forensic kit and barrier tape. We've got something odd. The radio crackled in acknowledgement. Tom stared at the spot beneath the dead streetlight. It was empty now, utterly. But the image of the mask lingered. That melted sneer. That slow salute. And that voice. He knew what it meant. Or at least what it wanted. It wasn't just about Nick or Jan or Robbie. It was about the moment in the basement. The moment he'd frozen. The moment Quinn had tugged his sleeve, whispered, "We have to go." And Tom hadn't argued. The moment they'd heard Nick call out, "Wait," and neither of them turned back. The choice. You picked the wrong one. It hadn't been random. It had been deliberate. Mercer was talking into his radio again, coordinating, but Tom barely heard. He walked to the edge of the pavement and stared down the road. A car passed, headlights sweeping past him. He didn't move. He could tell them, all of it. He could say what he remembered, what he'd chosen, what Quinn had chosen. He could drag it all into the light. But what would that do? Quinn had a life now, a job, a partner, a fragile kind of peace. And Tom, what did he have? A flat, a drawer of matches, and a mask he couldn't seem to throw away. Some truths didn't fix anything. They just bled. Behind him, Mercer approached. "I've got a car coming. We'll get you back to the flat. I'll assign someone to stay nearby tonight." Tom didn't answer right away. Then, "They knew something only I should know." Mercer nodded slowly. "You're sure?" "Yes. That narrows it. It shouldn't be possible." Mercer's face didn't change. "Not a lot's been lately." They stood in silence. Then Mercer said, "Could have been Quinn." Tom looked at him sharply. "Not saying it was," Mercer added. "But you said only two people heard that phrase, you and him." Tom shook his head. He wouldn't. Maybe not. But maybe someone got it from him. Maybe he told someone in confidence. Maybe someone close to one of the others. Someone who blames you both. Tom didn't answer. Because the truth was, even now, he wasn't sure Quinn hadn't said something. Maybe in drink. Maybe in guilt. Trauma leaked. And maybe that was enough. Or, Mercer said, his voice lower now, maybe this is something else. Tom looked at him. Mercer didn't elaborate. Just gestured back toward the station. "Come on." They didn't speak much on the ride back. Tom sat with his shoulders hunched, eyes flicking to each passing face on the pavement, each alley mouth. The streets were the same as always. Bins out for collection, windows dimmed, a fox darting between parked cars. But it all felt false, like a film set after wrap. At the flat, Mercer walked him to the door. "I'll have someone on the corner," he said. "You won't see them, but they'll be there." Tom nodded. "And Tom, if you remember anything else, even a detail, you call me." "Okay." Mercer hesitated. Then, "You did what you had to back then." Tom looked at him. "Did I?" Mercer didn't answer, just turned and walked away. Inside, the flat was cold. Tom didn't bother with the main light. He went straight to the kitchen, flicked on the kettle. The hum filled the silence. He opened the drawer beside the sink, took out the matchbox. He didn't light one, just held it. The mask was still in the cupboard under the stairs, folded, cracked, but intact. He'd never thrown it out. Couldn't. It had become a kind of relic, or penance. He thought of Nick, of the way he'd smiled at the party, all teeth and bravado, before everything slid sideways, of Joey trying to laugh off the tension, of Jan's sudden scream, Robbie's hand slapping against the wall in the dark, of the maze and the whispered phrase that had come back tonight like a curse. Do you remember what we said in the maze? Yes, he did. He walked to the window, looked out. Nothing. Still, he didn't feel alone. He didn't think he ever would again. Because the truth wasn't just in what had happened. It was in what had been allowed to happen, and what had been left to fester. Outside, a dog barked once in the distance, then silence. And somewhere, impossible to place, he thought he heard a foot drag. Just once. Then stillness. He didn't call Mercer. He didn't check the lock. He just sat, holding the matchbox, and watched the dark, knowing it would watch